That night, when the arena swallowed the final screams of the victorious gladiators, no one knew what had truly taken place beyond the spectacle. In Rome, a city that boasted of its grandeur and brutality, every gladiator's battle was a celebration of power and dominance. But there was something that the empire was too afraid to show the public, something hidden in the shadows, tucked away behind the closed doors of the palaces. It was something that could destroy the very idea of Roman greatness and forever alter the perception of what went on in the arenas. Gladiators were symbols of courage and strength, but few knew what happened behind their victories. After each fight, when they raised their swords in triumph, they became part of an ancient, cruel game that had little to do with the honor displayed on the sands of the arena. Her name was Cassandra. She was a slave, taken captive from one of the farthest reaches of the Roman Empire. Her homeland was destroyed, her family slaughtered, and now she found herself in Rome, where her fate rested in the hands of the victors. That day, she was captured during a raid when her village was burned to the ground, and, barely surviving, she was handed over to Roman authorities. Like so many others, she became part of the proud collection of captives, ready to be used for work or entertainment. But unlike the others, she was incredibly intelligent and refused to be silenced. Despite being a slave, her eyes still sparkled with defiance, and no matter how hard they tried to break her, she held on to something deep inside, a part of her spirit that refused to be extinguished. On that day, she was brought to the arena, where the deafening sounds and screams of the crowd filled the air. Before her stood a line of gladiators, their faces hidden, but their bodies brimming with strength. These were men whom Rome celebrated as heroes, but for Cassandra, they were part of something much darker and far more terrifying. Gladiator, the term Rome used to justify death for spectacle, was not just a title, it was the beginning of a much more sinister game. The true battles, as Cassandra would soon realize, took place not in the arena, but behind the scenes, after the battle had been won, and those who fought for honor on the sands became part of a different, more dangerous fight that remained unseen by the public. Cassandra had been chosen as one of the prizes, those who were to enter the game behind the curtain. She didn't fully understand what awaited her, but she knew one thing. Her life, like that of the other women, was at the mercy of the victors. In Rome, everything was decided not only by strength and honor, but by the secret dealings that no one outside of the highest echelons could ever see. Noticing her intelligence, one of the most powerful senators offered her something more than the role of a mere servant. He told her she could become part of another game, one that took place behind closed doors. Cassandra couldn't refuse. She was smart enough to realize that this was her only chance to survive and use her life in a way that might allow her to escape the grip of what was preordained. Several weeks passed. Cassandra was diving deeper into the secrets hidden within Rome. Every morning, she was led out of the cells where she and the other captives lived like shadows, and through the corridors filled with whispers and darkness. Those who witnessed it seemed invisible to most, but for her, a woman who had survived the worst moments of her life, this world was becoming stranger and more entangled. This was the moment when Cassandra realized she had become part of something much more dangerous than just a gladiatorial game. When the gladiators returned from victory, they didn't just become heroes to the crowd. Behind closed doors, they had a different role to play, one that was far darker and more sinister. Some of the gladiators who survived became part of a hidden game, one that was not just about fighting, but about rituals and dark magic. The true game was not fought in the arena, but behind the palace walls, where politics, magic, and blood were all part of the same strategy. Cassandra met them, the victors. She watched as they carried themselves proudly in front of the crowd. But what happened to them when the masks of victory came off? How did they treat the women, those who were used by Rome as pawns in this game? Not every gladiator became part of this darker game, but those who did were involved in ancient rituals, ones that were never spoken of aloud. Behind every battle was magic, tied to old cults that believed such sacrifices, human lives, souls connected to the dark, would keep Rome's power everlasting. One night, Cassandra was summoned into a private room. This was a place where deals were made, where secrets that shouldn't be seen by ordinary people were kept hidden. It was there she met one of Rome's most famous gladiators, who, after his victory, had grown close to the highest circles of power. His name was Publius. His face was scarred, and his gaze was cold and resolute. Publius approached her and whispered, "You need to understand, Cassandra. You are part of the game now. You can live and observe or become an instrument. The choice is yours." His words struck like a death sentence, but Cassandra wasn't afraid. She understood that she had no choice. Either she remained part of this circle or she became its enemy. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the danger lurking in those words. "You need to help me uncover a secret," said Gaius. "And if you agree, I will show you the path to freedom. But, as you know, in this game, the price is high. Everything you knew will be distorted. Everything you've seen will be a lie." Her heart raced. This was a proposition that couldn't be refused. But this time, she would not merely survive. She would become part of the strategy, and not just a pawn. Now she had to play the game, a game where everything had a price. Gaius revealed to her the truth about the elite that stood behind Rome's greatness, about those who secretly controlled everything, using magic, power, and ancient rituals to control each gladiator, each captive, and each person in Rome. It was a game where there were no winners, only those who survived. Cassandra now found herself at the center of this story. Everything she had endured was now her strength. In her hands was not just the power to survive, but the chance to destroy the very foundation of Rome. But she also realized that standing in her way were not only her enemies, but the empire itself, which would stop at nothing to maintain its control. Time passed, and the game grew more dangerous. Rome was getting closer to its inevitable downfall, and Cassandra's decision became more complicated. Now, deeply entangled in this web of deceit, she knew every step she took would have consequences. But she couldn't stop. Gaius continued to manipulate her, but Cassandra began to understand that her true strength lay elsewhere. She no longer just wanted to survive, she sought to change this world. One evening, when the night was dark and quiet, Cassandra sneaked into an ancient library where the old rituals were stored. She didn't know exactly what she would find, but her instincts told her this was the final test. The secret she uncovered was more horrifying than she could have ever imagined. Deep within the palace, among the shadows, she realized that her life had never been just a victim's tale. It had always been part of a system that controlled not just the gladiators and the captives, but Rome itself. Now she had to figure out a way to not just destroy this system, but to free those who had unknowingly become part of it, including herself. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was the only way to gain back her freedom and take back Rome from the shadowy figures that had manipulated it from the very beginning. Days passed, and Cassandra's resolve hardened. She began gathering her allies from those who had been mistreated, forgotten, and overlooked by the elite of Rome. They were the hidden figures of society, the gladiators, the slaves, and even some of the nobles who were beginning to question the empire's darkest secrets. With every passing hour, the walls of Rome seemed to grow taller, its secrets deeper. But Cassandra wasn't afraid anymore. She had discovered the truth, and the truth had given her the courage to act. One night, after a private meeting with several key figures who were beginning to understand what was at stake, She set her plan into motion. She would expose the dark heart of Rome's empire, not just through force, but through the revelation of the truth, which would turn the tide of power. But Gaius wasn't blind to her growing influence. He knew she was more than just a pawn now. She had become a threat, and a threat must be dealt with. He watched from the shadows as Cassandra prepared to strike. He knew that if she succeeded, everything he had built would crumble, but he also knew that she was the key to taking it all down. Cassandra couldn't afford to hesitate. The final battle wasn't just on the physical plane, it was a battle for the very soul of the empire. In this continuation, the stakes are raised as Cassandra begins to unite those who were oppressed and exploited under the Roman regime, including gladiators, slaves, and even the disillusioned elites. The tension builds as she prepares to confront the powers that have manipulated everything. Gaius, realizing her potential, becomes more determined to stop her, leading to a powerful confrontation ahead. Let me know if you'd like to further continue or adjust the narrative.